everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm the GCSE science teacher. In today's video, we're going to be learning about an infertility treatment called IVF, otherwise known as in vitro fertilization. If you do find this video helpful and you enjoy the content, please let me know by giving the video a thumbs up. Share this with someone else if you think they would benefit from learning more GCSE biology, and also do subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you so much if you have joined this community. It's amazing that you're here. So thank you so much. I do appreciate every single one of you. And if you've recently or just in general left a really lovely comment, thank you so much. It does make my day. And I do love to reply to all of you. So thank you very much as well. Let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is this layman's term of test tube baby. And you probably clicked on the video and you saw this image in the thumbnail and thought, what is that? What is going on here? So if you talk to anybody or you've heard of this term test tube baby, it's because they're referring to this medical procedure called IVF. And IVF essentially stands for in vitro fertilization. What does in vitro mean though? In vitro is a Latin term where the etymology of this word comes from in glass, and it's referring to this idea of using the sperm and egg cell and fusing them together during fertilization, but we're doing it outside the human body, outside of the anatomy that would normally be where fertilization occurs. And the glass part is talking about a petri dish usually, instead of maybe a test tube. But yeah, essentially that's what it's referring to. Now, in this procedure, I'm going to refer to things such as gametes, fertilization, but let's just clarify what those things mean. So the word fertilization just means when the sperm cell and the egg cell, which are both gametes, both are sex cells, and they are haploid cells, so they have half the genetic information in their nucleus, so half from the father, half from the mother, and then that, when they fuse together, makes a whole individual. This is what we talk about in terms of fertilization. So fertilization is when those two gametes, the nuclei, fuse together. And essentially this happens in the oviduct. The egg cell is released from the ovary around day 14 when there's a huge LH spike. Luteinizing hormone is what I'm talking about in terms of LH. This is a hormone that is released to help with ovulation or for that egg cell to be released. And this egg cell travels through the oviduct, otherwise known as the fallopian tube. And during that time, the sperm cell during sexual intercourse will travel, swim towards that egg, and a fertilization event will occur around that area. Now, if there is a fertilization event, the egg cell that's now fertilized will implant within the uterus lining, and different hormones will help with this process, as did other hormones in the first place to help that egg cell mature and for ovulation to occur. So we'll do a bit of a recap on some of those hormones, but I highly recommend, if you haven't already watched that menstrual cycle video I did, I will link it for you in the cards or the description box or even at the end of this video so you can check it out, but it will be useful to watch and just give you a bit of a backstory into what's going on before you kind of delve into this topic as well. Something else to mention as well, by the way, is this idea of IVF. You can see there's like a syringe on the screen and there's a sperm cell that's been injected into the egg cell. This actually is what they do to help with that fertilization event, because sometimes the sperm cell could be faulty. Maybe the flagella, the tail it has, doesn't swim towards the egg cell correctly, and that might be the reason for infertility, why people are even having this procedure in the first place. The cells themselves may be faulty. And sometimes this actually is why people use these treatments. So fertility treatments like this one helps people have children. If someone's infertile, that means they can't have children themselves and they need assistance in terms of a medical procedure such as this. There are lots of other reasons as well, however, for people choosing IVF, because it could be the case of same-sex individuals would like to have a child. And of course, if it's two men, they'll only have sperm, or two women, they'll only have eggs. So they would need a fertility treatment. And of course, a donor, someone who would donate a sperm or an egg cell. It may also be the case that someone can't gestate a child, so maybe they would need a surrogate as well to help with this process, someone who would actually carry the baby for them for 9 months. And it could also be the case that there is a genetic condition as well that prevents people having, healthy individual children. So this would also be an option for people too. But again, there are loads and loads of different reasons, but those are just a few to mention. So as a bit of a recap, there are 4 main female hormones that kind of control the menstrual cycle and help with fertility. So the first one is FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone, and essentially its job is to mature the egg. And this is done just before ovulation, before that egg cell is released, and in preparation for the sperm cell to meet it in the fallopian tube oviduct area. The other hormone is called LH. So this is to help with essentially releasing the egg cell from the ovary or ovulation around day 14 of the cycle. Progesterone is a really important hormone because it helps with maintaining that uterus lining. But also another hormone as well is estrogen, and this has a really good function of repairing and thickening the uterus lining as well. So as you can see, they are all kind of connected. Estrogen also inhibits FSH, so they all do have interactions together. Remember that FSH and LH are released by the pituitary gland in the brain, and that acts on the ovaries. Progesterone and estrogen are not released by the brain. They're actually released by different parts of the ovary or egg cell, and I will like I say, link that menstrual cycle video for you so you can go into more detail if you need to. So this is the part of the video where we're going to explain what IVF is, and these are the different steps involved in this medical procedure which you need to be aware of. So the first thing that happens is the woman is injected with a set of fertility drugs, and this includes FSH and LH. FSH is particularly important here because what we're trying to achieve by doing this is making the egg cells mature, but making sure a lot of them mature as well. Because what we're trying to do, we're trying to harvest a group of these egg cells from the ovary of the woman. So we have enough of them to actually inject with the sperm cell and help that egg cell develop, because there's no point just taking one egg cell and one sperm cell. We need quite a few to make sure that at least one of them works, because sometimes it won't work. So we have to make sure we have enough just in case, and then we have the best option to choose, okay, to implant back into the woman. Okay, so that's the first thing, injecting the woman with fertility drugs, including FSH and LH. Then what happens is, like I said, the egg cells are surgically removed and they are checked at this point. So they can be checked for genetic disorders or genetic conditions. So this is called a screening process to make sure that the egg cells are healthy. And if there are any issues, we don't use those eggs, or we have that conversation in terms of a genetic counseling session with the couple that are trying to conceive a child. So that's something that the medical professionals will do and have that discussion and looking to ways we can proceed and things like that. So after this is done, and the sperm cells are also checked as well, because lots of things can affect both egg and sperm cells in different ways, specifically genetics, but also lifestyle, things like smoking, alcohol consumption, the age of the individuals. All of those different things can have an impact on the quality of those cells. So let's say it's all been checked, it's all good, we're ready to go. The egg cell and the sperm cells that have been collected, the sperm cell is directly injected into the egg cell, and therefore the nuclei of both of those gametes can fuse together, and that's where you have your fertilization event in vitro or in glass or in a petri dish. And this is often done by looking down a microscope so you can see what's going on, because remember, their cells are very small. And then what happens is we have what we call a embryo. As it develops and divides, those cells divide, that embryo then starts to form, and then it is implanted either back into the woman or into a surrogate. So remember, a surrogate is an individual who is not genetically linked to that embryo, but they are carrying or gestating that baby for the 9 months. And again, this could be for a wide variety of reasons. Perhaps the mother can't gestate. Maybe that's the problem with the fertility, and that's why they've gone for this IVF method. Or perhaps they've just chosen this as the best option for them. Loads of different reasons. But yes, it can be implanted into a surrogate or indeed the genetic mother. And then obviously after that, a baby is born, happy days. So the procedure hopefully works. But of course, with anything like this, there are loads of pros and cons to both. And that's where we're going to discuss this evaluation kind of long answer writing, which they do like to ask you in the exam. So let's go to that now. So in the exam, you could be examined about this topic in a few different ways, often short answer questions. Maybe there's a diagram and they'll ask you what is going on for this procedure. But more often than not, they'll ask you to evaluate a procedure such as IVF, or evaluate something in some way in the exam. So it's worth we know about this skill here. Evaluate is a command word. It's asking you to do something and write in a very specific way. And if you are to evaluate something, you need to give the advantages, the disadvantages, and then have a conclusion at the end. Now, in terms of your conclusion, this is your opinion, and the examiner knows that. So they're never going to penalize you for having your own opinion. So you can't really go wrong here. All you need to do is make sure you write in a very logical way, because the answers, the marks that you get are ranging anywhere from 4 to 6 marks. So it's worth quite a few marks here. What I recommend, when you see a question like this, it will often have loads and loads of lines of space for you to write. And often students get quite stressed about this and they go, oh, I don't know how to write. I don't know what to write. What do I do? Where do I start? Best thing I can recommend you do is write with headings. So the first thing you want to write down is the word advantages, underline it, and then leave a few spaces of lines, and then do disadvantages, underline that, leave a few spaces of lines, and then conclusion, underline that. Then you have your structure. You're then going to just put a few bullet points in each of those categories. And a conclusion, like I said, is your opinion, what you believe based on that information. The only other thing to add to this, if they give you some graphical data, some tables with data inside, you want to use that information and refer to it. It's really important because they've given you that as a prompt. It's a clue to you to say, okay, I need to include that in my answer. So that is the only other thing I would say. So let's have a look at some of the positives and negatives of IVF. The first one is that it helps people who are infertile have children of their own. Another positive is that it's considered a safe procedure and has been done hundreds of thousands of times since 1978. It also can be used to screen for genetic conditions, which many people are happy about. Of course, with anything like this can lead to ethical concerns, and some people are not happy about this. So that could also be considered a negative too. Also, another positive is that some people are happy for their egg cells that are not used to be donated along with their embryos if they are not used in their own IVF treatment. And some people even are happy for them to be used in research as well. So that is some of the benefits. However, disadvantages include the fact that it's a very expensive process, and also this, coupled with the fact that it's a low success rate, can really increase the price, especially as some people need to have multiple cycles of IVF in order for success to occur. Something else is the side effects with injecting the woman with fertility drugs to increase the number of egg cells that can be harvested for this process. There's also a risk of multiple births, and I have seen this particular point in lots of mark schemes. So it's definitely worth making a note of if you're making flashcards and things, because multiple births essentially come from this idea that when we inject the embryo back into the woman, we often can inject 1 or 2, and sometimes even 3. And this is to make sure that at least one of them will attach to the uterus lining and actually start to grow and develop. Because sometimes, like I said, this doesn't happen. So to increase that success rate, often physicians will, put another embryo into the woman to make sure that at least one of them will attach. Now, this can be very problematic to the child that's growing, but also the mother as well, because now you have 2 embryos, 3 embryos that are growing, and that can obviously cause a lot of disruption to the anatomy of that person. So these are some risks. Another thing that can be a disadvantage is this condition called ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. And this is linked to this idea of multiple births. So when we do give somebody those FSH drugs, we are increasing the maturation of those egg cells. And this can cause the overstimulation of the ovaries and cause multiple egg cells to mature. And this can cause problems as well. So it's one of those conditions that can develop with this. Also, on more of a general scale, this can be a very emotionally and physically stressful, because someone's going to have their cells removed from them. They also are waiting to see if this works. They might be on their 2nd or 3rd trial of IVF and it hasn't worked before, and they're really excited because they can't have children, and then suddenly it doesn't work. All these sorts of things can have an emotional effect on people, and obviously it can be quite upsetting. And then lastly is this idea that there could be the increase in designer babies that form from this procedure. So some people are concerned that individuals may be choosing specific genetic traits, specific phenotypes like eye color, skin color, hair color, and the sex of the child, a boy or a girl, a lot of people are concerned that that may be where this procedure leads to, where people can actually choose what their child will look like in the future. And therefore, this has a lot of ethical and moral concerns around it. So that's another negative as well. And then, of course, depending on your own thoughts and your own ideas, based on this information, you would then write your conclusion at the end. And that's it from me today. I've been the GCSE science teacher and you have been curious. If you did enjoy this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up, share it with someone else, and do subscribe if you haven't already. I really do appreciate every single one of you for your support and kind words on my channel and just general positivity. I know for lots of you, you've been doing your GCSE exams and I hope they've gone well. Let me know in the comment section if you are in year 11 and you're almost done, or you've completely finished, or maybe you are doing a slightly different course and you're halfway through. Whatever the case is, do let me know. And maybe you're a year 10 and you're doing your mock exams at the moment. Let me know how they're going. If you have any video requests or any questions, always know you can ask in the comment section and I'll get back to you. Thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic day and I'll catch you in the next one.